So firstly, thanks Peter for that insightful presentation, and it was a bit of fun as well, and hopefully this panel will reflect a lot of what Peter was talking about, and also reflects what you guys are seeing in the industry. The whole topic about this panel is, looking at AppSec right now and looking at the tools versus people element of it, and how can we optimize budgets, but also strategies in understanding where the gaps are and how to address those equally. So I suppose to kick things off, we can do a round of introductions now, looking at experience, but also, Lee, was this, when you were a 5-year-old, did you always want to be in AppSec?
No, I wanted to be a paleontologist.
Right, okay.
And then Jurassic Park came out, which really enforced that.
And what's your current experience?
So I've been leading AppSec for Pearson for 5.5 years now. Came in it completely by accident. I was a database administrator when I joined Pearson. Then became test and release manager, QA manager. We didn't do any security testing at that stage. So I put my hand up just to do some security testing through QA.
And you're here now.
And then I'm here now.
What about you, Vincent?
Hi. So I started my childhood, I wanted to own a supermarket, which I thought was great because everyone, it's a business will never die.
Cash is king.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least that's what I thought when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. But afterwards, became a security consultant, worked in application security, infrastructure security, identity and access management, and now I'm a CISO for SocGen for EMEA.
So when I was 5, I wanted to be a fireman. I think like many men here. I had a fire station in my street, so it was really cool. I have a picture of me on the track. It was really good. But no, I discovered security actually when I was designing. I was an engineer creating networks for transport, and we do a lot of driverless metros like the Jubilee line. And I was thinking, but how about security? What's happening if someone hacks into the metro? They could actually stop it, crash it maybe. And no one was doing that at the time, so I shifted towards cybersecurity, and now I'm a consultant and I help companies do security by design and make sure security is actually adapted to the business.
Hi, I'm Reena, and when I was, 4 years old? 5 years
4,
old?
5, 6.
I wanted to be a dancer, so very, very different to what I'm doing now. So I work at M&G Prudential, and I head up the security culture and awareness team. And actually my background is learning and development, so around 4 years ago I took a sort of career change into security, but I'm able to apply all the learning and development principles from my old life into my new world in security.
Thank you. So I'm Bramfitt, and when I was 5 I wanted to be in the army, and I did that and got out pretty quick. I then, after a few years, became a developer and got into security by hacking the process around ServiceNow, and decided that was more fun than market risk. And currently we are running a cybersecurity consultancy specialising in AppSec and DevSecOps.
Cool, fantastic. And I suppose to kick things off, AppSec is a cluttered market when it comes to tools. There's a lot of organizations out there selling, and sometimes there's a lot of snake oil. So how do you navigate, and maybe we can start with Lee on this one, how do you navigate a cluttered market in terms of how do you prioritize which tools you're going to use? Is it per service, is it per application, is it per team?
So with the tools, I'm probably leaning towards Peter's feelings towards some of these tools. It's mostly about understanding the languages that I'm going to be covering the most. A lot of them promise coverage across the board of everything. Pearson is a challenge in and of itself. We have something like 2,000 applications within Pearson, so we're never going to get a fit for everything. So it's what covers the most, and ignore pretty much everything that's being promised from the tools. So we run an in-house comparison every 6 months of all the tools that are out there, the current versus next, ignoring Gartner. I'm probably going to get shot for that. Because there's a lot of fantasy, a lot of promises versus what actually gets delivered. So navigating through that's quite difficult. So we rely on our own expertise with that, and a working group within our development community.
Cool. And what about you, Vincent?
I think when it comes to choosing tool, what makes a difference is how you use them or how it's been implemented. So again, you have to really steer away from all the promises that are made. I think in my case, I'm quite lucky. I'm part of different forums where I exchange with my peers, and I think that's what makes most of the difference, is talking to other people who have used this tool or another tool and who tell you about how it's been implemented in their company, how it's working, what's not working, what it's doing, what it's not doing. And that's, I think, a big part of choosing a tool, basically.
And the dark question is, I suppose, how do you justify return of investment on certain tools?
So I think it is quite complicated when it comes to AppSec, because to calculate a return on investment, you must be able to have metrics to start with. How many vulnerabilities you find per 1,000 lines of code. I think we explored that at some point, and you have to have precise metrics and be able to demonstrate that. So I think that's the difficult part of it. However, the easy part is when you just look at how much of your security program you're spending on performing penetration tests, securing vulnerabilities, and that's where you might not have something really precise to propose, saying, yes, this is exact amount of money we're going to spend by using a different approach, but it's definitely worthwhile investing maybe 5% of the amount you're putting in correcting vulnerabilities in doing it a different way, which is maybe being more proactive and training people to start with.
Gotcha. And I'd be interested to hear what Lewis's take on that.
What's the question again? So with the tooling, what we really look for is the functionality that's being offered, but a big part of what we look for as well is the integration with the other tools. The correlation is the most important part, maybe not the most important, but one of the most important parts. And it has to be able to, you have to be able to do some engineering around it, or hopefully not engineer around it, but be able to plug it into other systems, because not one tool does everything. So that's what we look for there. I guess return on investment, the biggest part I look for is how preventative we can be. So you can hack all you like, and you can try and remediate, and you can try and climb that mountain, but if you're not putting the effort into prevention, you're just going to be doing that forever.
Gotcha. Cédric, have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we need to choose a tool. You will definitely not believe the vendor, 100%. But it's really try to understand what you want to fix. We talked about the gaps earlier. So some gaps will have more priority. Some of the tools will tell you, yeah, we are really good at detecting things. You need also to test them. So when you want to have a tool, if you can get a demo, if you can really test it, it would help you choose the right tool.
And in terms of, say, speaking to the board at the end of a year, then how do you measure success when it comes to?
Yeah, right. KPIs are really important, and it's really important to distinguish qualitative against quantitative KPI. So number of lines of code, I don't like it. IBM standards, they failed. Three, try to understand your progress. It's not always black or white. Sometimes you will have vulnerabilities no matter which tool you use, but to which extent can you mitigate these vulnerabilities? To which extent can you detect these vulnerabilities before they're exploited in the wild? Then it's a win. It's not the biggest win, but it's a win. And I think just demonstrating that you have evolved since last year is already good, and new budget was used, and you have results.
Okay. And I suppose shifting now the focus to the people arena, what kind of trend are you seeing in your experience when it comes to investing in people?
I think it's really changing a huge amount. So when I started this 4 years ago, to try and get a budget and a team when it comes to security culture awareness was really, really difficult. And what I'm finding now, 4 years later, is actually that's not my challenge anymore. It's very easy for me to say, this is the sort of funding that I need to achieve what we need to achieve when we're trying to reduce these risks and trying to prevent these sort of incidents happening. And also these are the people that I need within the team to assist. So I'm just seeing a massive shift. And I think that's because board, senior C-suite, they're really starting to understand a bit more about these risks and actually how important it is, and that they do need to provide some sort of funding, etc., to us to help us address these risks. So really changing.
And which demographic or which profession are you seeing more investment going into?
I would actually say, so AppSec is a really big one, and I would say culture and awareness is a huge one. So again, you know, going back 4 years, I didn't really have much of a budget, but now I've got a huge budget. So I would say, and I think, I shouldn't really say that. But, there is really it is, and I'm seeing this, it's not just me, all my peers across the industry that are doing this sort of role as well. I'm really seeing a shift in that area.
Okay, my next question is, how much budget have you, Reena?
Can't give you that one,
We can
sorry.
talk afterwards, we can talk afterwards. Lewis, have you anything to add to that? And maybe specifically focusing on maybe the developer layer, because developers have a massive role to play in the application security space. So maybe speaking towards developers.
Yeah, they do. So all of my guys were once developers. I believe in AppSec you can't do it another way. You know, you've got great pen testers that come from sysadmin, network admin, but they're not, you know, they don't know code. And I think you find a lot of guys, they've written a script and they think they're a coder. But the intricate knowledge and the pressures on the developer, that you have to understand what they're going through on a day-to-day basis to try and change their mind. I think the best example of this is unit tests. You know, 15 years ago, no one did unit tests. And the effort to try and get people to do unit tests is still going on. And that's because it's been forced upon them. No one's sat with them and kind of worked through it. And we are starting to see that change now. But I think security's got to start going in a similar way as that.
Okay, Lee, have you anything to add?
Probably need 5 of these things, don't you? So yeah, actually, and it's interesting about the unit test that you're saying there. So we're kind of pushing and leveraging that aspect as well. So I've got 12 guys in my team, and I've got 6,000 developers. So yeah, the developers have to be as good at doing my job as I am. You know, they can tap into me as a form of expertise to be able to say, hey, look, I'm stuck on this particular issue, but yeah, there's no way I can ever help them all out in one go. So it's being able to work with them. So the developer in my organization has become the most important person within AppSec.
And is there a fine balance between making a developer a security expert or just sufficient in security?
Oh, that's a very fine balance. So, I mean, certainly within our experience, it's an education company, which kind of helps. Taking the security champion thing didn't really work for us for whatever reason. I don't know why. Quite happy to talk to other people as to how they managed to get it work in their organization. But certainly finding people who have more of a leaning towards security, more of a curiosity, and then helping them, usually working with their boss, get some time away from doing just the grinding, the crunch work, and start helping the other people around. That's that knowledge sharing. That one guy walks out, then you've lost all that vulnerability knowledge sharing. So we're starting to emphasize on that. AppSec can help you figure it out, but we're not there to run the tools. We're not there to do all of that. That's your job. We're here to help you understand how that works and how to make that better.
Okay, so it's scaling. It's scaling people to scale technology.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly that.
Okay. We've got a question from the audience. How I'm going to paraphrase this. How to measure prevention. So Vincent, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Nice. How to measure prevention? Ooh, that's a difficult one. Can you, the person who asked the question, would you mind elaborating a little bit?
No, you're gonna.
It's a typo there. So I guess it's more one of the struggles that we have with clients is it's really hard for them if their AppSec program is working well to be able to demonstrate that they're actually preventing things. So I guess it's kind of is that the challenge that you get and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the question on the return on investment. How do you measure that? And I think that the point I was making at least was it's quite difficult because, as I said, you need to have metrics in place, etc. So I think the angle to take is more to look at how much you're spending being reactive to this risk and how you could probably reduce that spending by being more preventive.
Cedric, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say so. If you start listening to people, they tell you, yeah, we don't want to do security, it's too much of a hassle. You're not preventing anything. Even though you may have all the tools or the controls in place, if people circumvent the controls, it doesn't work. So talk to people.
And Reena, maybe the cultural aspect of security is important in flipping that switch just purely on reactional security to more preventative. So can you speak towards the cultural aspect?
Yeah, it's really about getting people to understand why it's important. I think hearts and minds, kind of winning people around, getting them to really see the importance of this. So it's not just a case of security are telling me to do this. It's something where people, it's ingrained in them, it's part of their DNA to be thinking about security as they're doing their development work, and it's really difficult. It's kind of getting that buy-in from the top level, but then also everyone, what you want is everyone talking to each other. You don't just want their management saying to them, this is what you have to do. It's getting that dialogue going in between at that level of people talking, and that's really how I think the message can start to spread, and you start to cultivate this culture within an organization where security is just ingrained into it.
It's almost the appetite is that developers are pulling this into their environment rather than security people pushing.
Exactly.
So flipping that switch. Luce, have you anything to add to, or maybe we can go to the next question. What skills must an AppSec engineer have?
Okay, so our guys, like I mentioned before, were developers. They can't just be developers, they have to be ambidextrous developers. Now, there is a difference between your really top-class developers that it doesn't matter what language you put in front of them, they'll figure it out, they know how to figure out the libraries, they know what they're doing. And a guy who's dedicated to one particular language, he's not even interested in leaving JavaScript or whatever. So that's the first thing we look for in our guys. The second thing is the security courses, so OSCP, security, the Offensive Security Advanced Web one, we just got our guys going through that. They have to have popped a box as well. They literally, it can't just be a theory classroom thing. They actually have to have been a pen tester and actually pop something. Now, you should imagine a developer to a pen tester to one of our guys, there's very few there. And just on the prevention thing, the way we measure the prevention is by looking at the developers individually, looking at all the tests, all the combination of the DevSecOps pipeline, the DAST, the SAST, all the stuff going on. And obviously, use tools like Secure Code Warriors help that. And you can see whether a developer is permanently releasing a stupid vulnerability, or even a vulnerability that maybe they shouldn't know about. Maybe we expect too much of them, and that's how we measure it. Are they getting better? And that's how we measure our prevention.
Do you want to take a stab at the second question?
Second question.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, same thing. OSCP is pretty important for me. Being able to engineer your way out of a problem is very key. So being able to think on your feet. It's okay. You found a vulnerability as a developer. You're being able to talk to them. You can talk in their language, but you also have to be able to solve the problem. And some of those problems can come in really weird ways. And actually, the default statements of "fix it like this" could result in a phenomenal cost to the company. We've had a few of those cases over the last few weeks. And I need to be able to trust my guys to go into a room, talk with the developers, and hash out a problem that's not going to bust the bank. It's going to fix the problem, and it's being creative. And that's a real key for them.
Okay.
I'm actually going to take a stab at the first one in terms of the prevention. So, and again, it's around that engineering thing. So our guys are looking at the data and trying to correlate the data from all the various tools, and then the stuff that they found manually, and then start to come back and look at who was doing that. So you've got the commit histories and stuff like that, and we should be able to very quickly work out that the particular group of people are introducing a type of vulnerability, and that's not to smack them on the back of the hands. Exactly. It's about that learning opportunity. We can see that in this language we are going to expect these things, and these guys are now using that language. Okay? So before they even start, let's go over there and let's start talking to them about that solution.
And we break that down by business unit, by language, we theme, types of vulnerabilities, so we put a whole bunch together. And that's how you can really start to make a difference. You can see the impact, you can see how it changes.
And we hung ourselves out to dry a little bit by then offering out defect escape rate. So anything that anyone else discovers that's a negative on us, that's a KPI that we track all the time. We track that all the way through the year. So if a defect does get through all of our stuff, somebody finds it, whether or not being UAT, a developer, provider, anything like that, that's a big red mark against us, and then we go back and analyse why we missed that.
Great, great. I think hindsight's a great thing. Captain Hindsight, etc. But if we can zoom out and, maybe a trivial question, but if we had a blank canvas, where would each of you spend your first dollar on AppSec?
For me, it'd be finding the right person, because you can have all the tools and all the things in the world. If you don't have the person behind it to be able to go forth and distribute your vision, you're lost straight away.
So it's building a team?
Building the team.
Okay. What would you, Vincent? And you have Reena's budget as well, by the way.
No, I think this. This problem we're facing is as much a technology problem as it is a human problem. So once you recognize that, you should be asking yourself, what are you doing to make sure people have the right skills and make sure people that they are influenced or they have a reason to change their behaviors to take this risk into account. So I guess where I would start spending my money would be making it worthwhile for people to come up with a secure application rather than deliver in production something which has lots of flaws.
Okay. Cédric?
Yeah, really make sure security is not a blocker. So try to adapt AppSec or any kind of security you would do for developers to support them instead of fighting a wall. And when you work in Agile, having this attitude would actually make developers more aware when they start coding. And when they release, they would be aware of the potential vulnerabilities they may introduce. They may even do their own tests. And use security as a support team, not as an antagonist.
I think my one's quite similar to getting the right people to talk. So, you've got your engineering, your application security guys, you've got my guys, where we're culture and awareness, and we've got that specialism in that learning and development. You've obviously got the actual developers, the engineering guys, and it's actually pulling everyone together, coming up with that strategy, and really someone championing all of that to push it through and really a joined up approach.
Lewis?
Yeah, it'd be people every time. That's a shock, isn't it, for a consultant? But no, I got a really good example of why the people are more important. So we did a pen test about 3 months ago, and we rocked up to a firm, just a brand new environment. They'd had some other security, input, and we got to the password manager, and we got in with admin. So it just shows you the tools there to be used by people. The people are the most important thing there.
We've got an interesting question up there. I'm trying to see it with the sun. So with hundreds of thousands of applications running on your environment, once a vulnerability is flagged, how do you prioritize and how much do you leave for later? Lee, do you want to?
Okay, that was unfriendly. So we do have exactly that problem. We have a lot of legacy. We do have a lot of issues popping up, and that golden prioritization thing. And that actually comes down to the people thing. So if it really comes down to a call that we've got 500 vulnerabilities here, and we've had numbers greater than that. We've got 500 vulnerabilities here. We can only fix 15 in the next 3 weeks. What are we going to do? That's where that person, it's not my call. It shouldn't be something that ever comes to me. It's my person. I can trust him to be in that room with them and say, right, these are the 15 that you really need to target based on my experience, my knowledge of that. So it doesn't matter what tool found it, without that human being being able to say, rationally, if you fix this one, and this one, these go away completely. And that can be a bit of an effort for us.
So is it pragmatic based or is it risk based?
It's pragmatic. You can't fix everything.
Okay.
So what you can fix are not necessarily quick wins, but the wins that consume the most efficient amount of time whilst reducing those vulnerabilities.
Okay.
It's
anyone else want to take a stab at it?
I think a combination of risk and how easily you can correct a vulnerability. Obviously that 1,000 man day vulnerability where you're going to have to rewrite the whole application, you're probably better off looking at ways to mitigate that risk rather than rewrite your whole application.
I agree. I tend to work on the risk-based approach, mostly on the impact, but not only technological risk, but also the risk iterated to the company. and sometimes you may have very, very critical vulnerability from a technical point of view that has actually no impact on the business. So maybe, okay, it's not the most top priority, but you may have a few medium vulnerabilities that you can combine to actually create damage. And this is where you need to talk to people. Again, we come back to people. So I think try to be pragmatic and try to identify actually where you get leverage, where you can actually mitigate the highest risks, not only from a technical impact, but on the business.
And to your point around those vulnerabilities that you might ignore and put into a separate bucket, do they add up, and is it a long-term problem then that has to be fixed somewhere down the line? Is it just sweeping it under the carpet, or what's the plan when you're...
I used to lead a team of pen testers, and we were doing a lot of pen tests, and most of the time we had high risk vulnerabilities that could even impact the business. And we came back the next year for yet another pen test. We found the same, so yeah, they tend to add up if the company is not aware of how it could actually create damage. So I think it's back to awareness.
We've got a fun question next, and maybe this one's for Lewis. Do you have a plan and when a plan if and when a breach happens?
What's the question? I can't see it.
Can we move that one up to the top? Oh, it's gone. Oh yeah, it's the very top.
When a breach happens, is it tools that will detect it, or is it a combination? When a breach happens, someone's already detected it. So by that point, it's you know, you failed.
Fire extinguishers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it. You know, when a breach happens, is it tools that will detect a combination? It will be a combination. You know, tools will detect some stuff. It won't detect things like, you know, business logic flaws. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. So you need, you know, you do need your experts looking at it. That's not going to go away. The way we prioritize that is obviously it's the business critical apps, and it's the apps with the most sensitive data. They get the manual prioritization first, whereas, you know, apps that maybe aren't so critical or in, you know, low risk environments, they will just get the automation to begin with, and they'll get a basic set of security.
Can we move on to the next question? Next question is very interesting, actually. How do you address vulnerabilities in legacy applications where the dev team has left? So a lot of COBOL.
Ambidextrous developers. And that's how we'll do it. I've got a couple of clients here that will testify, so that's how we do it. We would personally take it on ourselves. We would not leave it there. We would get it fixed. And just back to the prioritization one, that's a really thin line to walk, because some vulnerabilities that will be reported to you as low informational will be the key. That will be all the attacker needs to get in. So it really does come down to experience on how you're going to deal with those.
Lee, do you want to take a stab at the legacy application question? Interesting to hear your thought at the top one.
Do you want my honest answer or my approach to it? My honest answer is shut it down. And we do have this, again, a lot. I mean, I'm not sure if you know, Pearson is in a massive transformation, as many large companies are. And we are finding these applications that are actually business critical, where the developers didn't leave last year, they left years ago. And we're only finding out that they exist because we're trying to turn boxes off. And for us, the approach is really, why is it legacy? Why does it have any developers? And what can we shift its responsibilities onto? Because we're going to burn up a lot of cycles trying to fix something that actually may not be fixable. And then there's that experience again. It's back to the people aspect. If you guys understand the vulnerabilities that are in there, they can start to recommend some compensating controls. To mitigate that doesn't necessarily require a lot of guys to come in to try and fix it. But if you do need people to come in and fix it, you need to know who. And that's, again, from your people. They need to be able to say, right, we're going to need these kinds of people to fix it. Otherwise, you end up with 2 years' worth of development on an application that you should have shut down.
The other thing I'm hearing bandied around, if anyone's thinking about containerizing it and thinking that makes it okay.
Oh, lift and shift. Lift and shift, just stick it over there. That's fantastic. That just makes it worse, actually.
Exactly.
And that people element actually ties nicely into the next question, and maybe this is for Reena. So what are some of the tactics that you're using in your organization to encourage developers to want to learn to code securely?
So we're really at the beginning stages of our journey in all of this. We're going through a merger at the moment, so M&G and Prudential are merging. We've got two different kind of, or multiple different development capabilities. So really, as we're going through that transformation, what we're also trying to do is look at how we can implement a really good learning strategy for our developers. So that will include things like tooling, like Secure Code Warriors and other tools out there that do things like that. But it's also about really getting out there and speaking to people. And I go back to what I was saying before, getting people to understand why it's really, really important. That's when you can start to really engage them. And you're kind of onto a winner when people are coming to you and asking for that education. So hopefully at some stage we'll be getting there, but that would kind of be my answer to that.
May I? Yeah, so you're working with developers, they're working on projects. One of the tactics we use when we work with clients to identify a pilot project or 2 pilot projects, make sure that what we're doing actually is fit for purpose, adapted to the culture, and if not, we use actually the experience in the project to adapt it. But yeah, don't deploy everything live for everyone at once, I would suggest.
And I suppose we have to wrap up soon, but if we can zoom out and actually look at industry use cases, and you look at the whole publication around Hertz versus Accenture, and it's probably one of the ones that is most public now, and there's a lot of court cases involved with that. Do you think that there's going to be a shift in organizations expecting secure applications from outsourcing units? And I suppose, how do you foresee the market changing in that respect? Is it becoming more of a commercial discussion rather than actually purely just AppSec? Vincent, do you want to?
I think it's becoming more of a business discussion, which is where it should be, because at the end, we're not fixing vulnerabilities for the hell of it. We're doing it because we're trying to protect our business from losing money. So that's typically where, in this case, that's where it's been taken. It's the board of Hertz who's hurt by the development, the bad development, and by Accenture. And I think, I mean, going back to everything we've discussed, that's how you're going to make a change. Going back to the old legacy applications, if you involve the business and you make them understand that right now they're taking a huge risk on their business critical function, that's when they will probably prioritize, help you prioritize the fixing of this issue. So, and going back to the Hertz Accenture story, I think, yeah, it's the more it becomes a big business discussion, the more it will be included in contracts, the more it will be part of the commercial discussions that you have when you outsource a product.
Lee, do you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sort of comes down to the fact we're used to sticking stuff in the cloud and having a shared responsibility model. And within my organization, we're trying to do the same thing around how people use the tools and what to expect from them. And I think we're going to start to see more of a shift to that. And I think you're right, it's a business conversation. It's because that's ultimately what gets affected. It's the money aspect. And with GDPR coming in, I think that's really brought it into focus.
And I suppose accountability, visibility is important as well.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And maybe to diverse slightly to maybe the developer layer, do you think the market's ready for a secure coding standard or a secure coding certification? And maybe Cédric, you've worked with ANISA before, writing standards, so
there's a new certification coming called the EU Cybersecurity Act. They will put a label on products, on systems, on processes to validate the security. So you have 3 levels: self-assessment. The second level is assessed through a third party, and the third level is assessed through an accredited company such as BSI or VeriSign. And I think this would give enough visibility, and this would actually make security a decision matrix. So when you buy a piece of software, you acquire a service, you're actually looking only at the functionalities today. It's really hard to look at security because you have no visibility. With this label, you should have visibility. And in the UK, the DCMS is publishing a consultation on regulation for IoT, where they mandate 3 security requirements, one of them being no default password. This is coding, this is AppSec. Second one being having security patching, again, AppSec. And the third one being able to identify a person or point of contact to report externally found vulnerabilities. So this would tremendously help if this regulation passes. So there's a consultation out there if you want to have a look at it.
Lewis, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. First on the hurts the censure. I've seen this in so many companies. This is not an isolated incident. And it's not even really a security issue. This is quality in development, getting what you're paid for. I mean, I think I've read some of this case, and even the pages were kind of like, unrespected. It was pure university stuff, and that's generally what happens when you go into these big companies and they're selling you development. I've seen it many, many times, and I've seen millions of pounds and euros lost because of it. What was the other one?
The other one? The second question?
Yeah.
Do you think the market's ready for a secure coding standard for even developers?
Definitely ready for that. And I think where that needs to be focused is on the DevOps pipeline, and it's a combination of the code pipeline and the infrastructure as code pipeline being tied in together, being done in a standardized way. We work really hard on securing those, and I guess we have got a sort of standard already because we've been doing it so much. But that's what it's the infrastructure as code is definitely where it's going to be. It's the applications and tying those pipelines together so it is all integrated and doing that in a secure fashion.
So it's a working together standard where security and development are tied for the same goal and objective. Okay.
Exactly, and infrastructure, it's tying them all together. Yeah.
Cool. I suppose the last question to wrap everything up, I'm going to quote Gartner, sorry Lee. But if you look at the Gartner report on how much spending is being allocated to cybersecurity, and 141 or 114 billion last year was spent on security tools and services, but only 2.7 billion was spent on application security. Now, considering Peter's stat around 21% of data breaches occur from exploitable vulnerabilities in the application layer, do you think that there actually has to be more spending on application security, or maybe reverse the small, but are we spending it wisely?
Yeah, I think that's a combination. I think there does need to be more investment, but I think you've got to invest in the right way. I mean, the industry's not doing it right because there's never been so much money spent on cybersecurity, yet the figures for the crime rates are still going up. So we're not doing it right. So actually, application security is just a part of that, but interacting with developers, doing it in a different way, that's what we should be doing.
Reena, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm not really close enough to the actual tooling for app development, but I definitely think that there could be some more money spent, but it's making sure that the money is spent in the right way, because it's really easy just to chuck a lot of money at things, but it's just making sure it's actually having an impact.
Yeah, nothing to add, I agree.
I think to go back to Peter's point, who was telling us how badly we've invested in the past, I think, we should make it much more easy for people, for developers to develop securely, and I think that's more important than actually looking at what percentage of spend we're doing on AppSec. Is changing the way we approach this problem so it's just seamless and easy for developers to do it the right way to start with.
Yeah, no, I agree. So the tools are always going to be out there. They're going to be evolving and getting better and better and better. But the people that are struggling with the security aspect are the people actually doing that, the development. And it's understanding that you can throw a tool at it and that's fantastic. It's just going to tell you that you've got something wrong. That's a negative approach, and I do agree with Peter on that one. And so the shift really does need to come in understanding why that keeps on happening, and back into the education stuff. The tools are always going to tell you that you've got it wrong, but it's too late then. You've already got it wrong. You shouldn't be making that mistake. So the investment in AppSec does need to change. It needs to shift. And it's not shifting left. It just needs to shift from this detecting to understanding why it occurred and then correcting it, rather than just detecting it. But certainly I would like it to see a bit more investment in that, because that's not just people who are expert at discovering vulnerabilities. That's people who are expert at being able to talk to people and tell them why that happened and educate them. So I think the AppSec sort of layer starts becoming a mix between a teacher and detector.
Cool. Has anyone any questions from the audience that hasn't uploaded them to the Slido? We've about 2 or 3 minutes left. Dex?
How big a problem do you have with code reuse? People just copying stuff off GitHub and saying this says it does this, but then it gets integrated into an application that might be most critical, and then somebody comes along
It is a problem. What kind of answer are you expecting?
What's your strategy for dealing with it?
No, it's education, I think. So, you know, it's really, it's making their life easy, right? They need a solution to what it is. They go on to, you know, the internet, they find it and they plug it in without really thinking, actually, is this doing just what it says that I think it's doing, or is it doing all these additional things? And it comes down to getting people to understand why it's important not to do that. So I think it is really education and that whole cultural piece and getting that behavioural change happening. Again, back to the why.
Can I extend the question
Yeah.
for you specifically? So your company's merging two different
Yes.
companies, and you'll have multiple development teams. Some of them might be in-house, some of them might be external.
Yes.
How are you going to educate those people that are coming from completely different sort of mindset? Externals just thinking fast features, get it done.
Yeah.
Internal thinking, perhaps thinking I might have to own some of this problem.
I think it's a really big issue for me at the moment because we've got two very distinct cultures. They were very, very different businesses. So it's trying to bring that together and create this overall culture that aligns to our business culture. So that is one of the biggest challenges. The other challenge is actually all the outsourcing as well that we do in the development space. So, you know, we outsource a lot of it to third parties. Now I've got that responsibility to ensure that the people that we're outsourcing it to still have that relevant training, awareness around what they should and shouldn't be doing. We have in our contracts that, you know, the clauses that say that they will provide that training, but then it's all about that due diligence and making sure that you have that oversight, that they are delivering the quality of training and education that you would deliver if you were doing it in-house. But I would say it's definitely a challenge. When you've got two different cultures, it takes a really, really long time to create that new culture. You know, I'm talking years and years and years. So I think there's more in that question. Well, I say cultural change, we're talking like 5 to 10 years. And I know that sounds crazy, but really to ingrain a good culture, it takes a long time and it's a lot of effort.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think we're out of time, guys, but if I can just summarize everything with just maybe 2 or 3 sentences. I think we know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. But it's educating people to know and how to know. But thank you, everybody, for attending the panel. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more about the panel or the guests, you know, contact us at Secure Code Warrior. There will be a recording. We're happy to share it with it. And Peter, are you happy to share your slides with people who are interested in it? So thanks very much, everyone, for rising.